Karen's transformation from suburban mom to private investigator began at 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, crouched behind the Petersons' hedge with binoculars and a notebook. She'd spent the weekend researching Dave Martinez online, discovering a decade-old bankruptcy filing and 2 unpaid parking tickets, ammunition she planned to weaponize. "This is how you conduct proper due diligence," she muttered, adjusting the focus on her binoculars as Dave emerged to collect his newspaper. She'd already documented 17 suspicious activities: late-night visitors, his sister dropping off cookies, unusual deliveries, Amazon packages, and potential code violations, a garden gnome that might exceed the HOA's lawn ornament restrictions. Her phone buzzed with another notification from the Willowbrook Estates Facebook group. Someone had posted a meme with her face photoshopped onto a detective's body, captioned "Karen Holmes, the case of the missing pool." 43 laughing reactions and counting. "Very mature," she hissed, screenshotting it for her harassment documentation file. By Thursday, Karen had expanded her surveillance operation. She'd installed a security camera that accidentally captured Dave's driveway, started timing his comings and goings, and even followed him to Home Depot, where she photographed his receipt through the window. Suspicious purchases: mulch, sprinkler heads, and garden edging, clearly planning unauthorized landscaping. "Mom, this is getting weird," said her daughter Madison, finding Karen hunched over property maps in the dining room at midnight. "Dad called. He's worried about you. Your father doesn't understand the importance of maintaining property values." Karen replied without looking up. She traced Dave's property lines and discovered a potential encroachment. His garden shed might be 6 inches over the setback line. "Besides, I'm protecting our neighborhood." "From what?" "A guy who filled in his pool." Karen finally looked up, her eyes bloodshot from staring at documents. "It's about principle, Madison. Rules exist for a reason. When people think they can just ignore the rules, society breaks down." Madison backed toward the stairs. "Maybe you should talk to someone. Like professionally." "I am talking to someone." Patricia bills $400 an hour. Friday evening brought Karen's breakthrough. While conducting her nightly reconnaissance from the Chen's azalea bushes, she spotted Dave talking to a city inspector in his backyard. They were examining something near the fence line, pointing and measuring. Heart racing, Karen crept closer, her new night vision binoculars cutting through the darkness. The inspector was shaking his head, writing on a clipboard. Dave looked frustrated, running his hands through his hair. "Problem with the septic repair," she heard the inspector say. "You'll need to dig up that whole section again. And the permit you pulled doesn't cover the scope of work." Karen nearly fell over backward. Permit violations. Her months of investigation had finally paid off. She called Patricia at 6 a.m. the next morning. "I've got him. Unpermitted septic work, potential health code violations, and I have it all documented." "Karen, it's Saturday morning. File the complaint Monday. I want him in violation hearings by the end of the week." But as Karen hung up, she noticed something troubling. Tyler was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his cereal, dark circles under his 8-year-old eyes. "Rough night, buddy?" "I had the sewage dream again," he whispered. "Are you going to make us move away from Mr. Dave?" For just a moment, Karen felt a flicker of doubt. Then she remembered the laughter at the HOA meeting, the Facebook memes, the way Dave had smirked as she stood in sewage water. "We're not going anywhere, sweetie. Mommy's just making sure everyone follows the rules." The violation hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m., and Karen arrived 90 minutes early to set up her evidence presentation. 42 printed photos, 3 binders of documentation, and a laptop loaded with surveillance footage. She'd even prepared handouts for the 5-member HOA board. "This seems excessive, Karen," said board member Susan Walsh, flipping through the thick folder of evidence. "We just need to determine if there was a covenant violation." "Thoroughness is never excessive," Karen replied, connecting her laptop to the projector. "Dave Martinez has systematically flouted our community standards, and I have documentation proving a pattern of disregard." Dave arrived with his sister Carmen, who Karen recognized as the suspicious late-night visitor from her surveillance notes. He looked tired, worn down by months of legal battles and permit delays. Good. Karen wanted him to understand the consequences of challenging her authority. Before we begin, announced Board President Robert Kim, I want to remind everyone that this is a formal hearing. We'll maintain decorum and... Point of order, Karen interrupted, rising from her seat. As acting AHOA president, I should be chairing this hearing. You're the complainant, Karen. You can't chair your own violation hearing. Heat flushed Karen's cheeks. Another attempt to undermine her authority. Fine, but I reserve the right to present evidence comprehensively. For the next 45 minutes, Karen methodically laid out her case. Slideshow photos of the excavation, documentation of the children's fall, evidence of unpermitted septic work, and even grainy footage of Dave's suspicious Home Depot purchases. In conclusion, she said, advancing to her final slide, Dave Martinez has shown willful disregard for our community standards and created a dangerous situation that could have killed my children. The room was silent. Dave sat with his head in his hands. Mr. Martinez? Robert Kim prompted. Your response? Dave stood slowly. I removed a 20-year-old pool that was costing me $800 a month to maintain. I got the required city permits. I fixed the septic line when it was accidentally damaged. And I've spent $4,000 in legal fees defending myself against. He gestured toward Karen's elaborate presentation. This. But you didn't get HOA approval, Karen interjected triumphantly. Because pool removal isn't covered in our covenants. I checked. 3 times. Carmen leaned forward. My brother's been getting calls at work, Karen. Anonymous complaints to his boss about his character. His kids are being teased at school because their classmates saw viral videos of your kids in his yard. Karen's stomach lurched. She hadn't made any calls to Dave's workplace, had she? That's not relevant to this hearing, she said quickly. Actually, it is, said Susan Walsh, looking directly at Karen. We've received multiple complaints about harassment. Your surveillance activities, your following him to stores, your late-night phone calls to board members demanding emergency meetings. The room began to spin slightly. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was the victim here. She was protecting the neighborhood. I enforce our community standards, Karen said, her voice rising. Someone has to maintain order. Someone has to ensure property values. Someone has to... Karen. Robert Kim's voice cut through her spiraling monologue. We're voting to dismiss all violations against Mr. Martinez. Furthermore, we're recommending you step down as HOA president, effective immediately. The words hit her like a physical blow. Step down. After everything she'd sacrificed for this community. You can't do that. I was elected by the homeowners. We can call for a confidence vote, Susan said gently. But honestly, Karen, maybe it's time to focus on your family. Your kids have been through a lot. Karen looked around the room. 47 neighbors had attended her emergency meeting 3 months ago. Tonight, barely 15 showed up, and most were staring at their phones or whispering among themselves. She'd lost them. Somewhere between the surveillance and the legal battles and the midnight phone calls, she'd lost everything she tried so hard to control. This isn't over, she whispered, gathering her binders with shaking hands. But even as she said it, Karen knew it was. Karen Blackwood stood knee-deep in muddy water at the bottom of what used to be her neighbor's swimming pool, her designer blazer ruined, clutching her sobbing 8-year-old son while her twin daughters shrieked from above. 20 minutes earlier, she'd been the most feared HOA president in Willowbrook Estates. Now she was trapped in a construction pit, her authority literally undermined. HELP. Somebody HELPUS. She screamed, her perfectly styled blonde hair plastered to her skull with suspicious brown water that definitely wasn't just mud. The irony wasn't lost on anyone watching from their windows. For 3 months, Karen had waged war against Dave Martinez for removing his pool without proper HOA approval. She'd filed 17 violations, organized neighborhood meetings, and even hired a lawyer. What she hadn't expected was her own children to dig their way into his backyard, through the loose fence boards, then tumble into the half-filled excavation site during her final inspection. Mom, It smells like poop down here, wailed Tyler, her son, as he clung to her soggy sleeve. Karen's face flushed crimson, and not just from embarrassment. The septic line Dave had accidentally nicked during excavation was still leaking. She was standing in sewage water, and the whole neighborhood was watching through their smartphones, undoubtedly recording her humiliation. Dave Martinez, she bellowed toward his house. This is all your fault. Has you if our everything who you all bored. Dave appeared at his back door, work boots unlaced, coffee mug in hand. Karen? What the hell? How did you get in there? Your property is a death trap. My children could have been killed. She tried to boost Tyler up toward the edge, but the muddy walls kept crumbling under their weight. Your kids are on my property, Dave said, setting down his mug. Pretty sure that's trespassing. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. Even covered in sewage, trapped in a hole, she refused to back down. I'm the HOA president. I have every right to inspect violations. At 6 in the morning, on a Saturday, Dave pulled out his phone. Maybe I should call the cops. Don't you dare, Karen snapped, then immediately regretted it. She needed help getting out, but her pride wouldn't let her ask nicely. 3 months of bitter warfare had hardened her heart against any display of weakness. The twins above started crying harder as more neighbors emerged from their houses. Mrs. Chen brought a ladder. The Johnsons called 911. Even crotchety old Mr. Peterson came out to gawk. As sirens wailed in the distance, Karen realized this moment would define her reign as HOA president. She could either swallow her pride and work with Dave, or double down on her vendetta and risk losing everything she'd fought to control. She chose war. 2 weeks after the incident, as the neighborhood now called it, Karen sat in her home office surrounded by legal documents, property surveys, and a laptop displaying 17 different code violations she'd researched against Dave Martinez. The viral video of her sewage soap rescue had garnered 2.3 million views, but she'd spun it as evidence of Dave's negligence to anyone who'd listen. Mrs. Blackwood, this is getting expensive, said her lawyer, Patricia Summers, shuffling through invoices. You've spent $8,000 on this case already. The city inspector found no actual violations. Karen's manicured nails drummed against her mahogany desk. He removed a pool without HOA approval. That's a clear violation of our covenants. The covenants say landscaping changes require approval. A pool removal could be argued as restoration, not landscaping. Then we changed the covenants. Karen's voice carried the steely determination that had made her feared in PTA meetings and city council sessions. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. Patricia sighed. Karen, between the legal fees, the special meetings, and the fact that half your neighbors think you're obsessed. I'm not obsessed. I'm thorough. Karen stood, smoothing her pencil skirt. She'd bought 3 new blazers since the sewage incident, each more authoritative than the last. Dave Martinez humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. He let my children fall into a pit of sewage. Your children trespassed onto his property. Minor detail. Karen waved dismissively. The point is, he's made me look weak. If I let this slide, every homeowner in Willowbrook will think they can ignore the rules. That evening, Karen stood before 47 irritated neighbors in the community center, her PowerPoint presentation glowing behind her. Exhibit A, she announced, clicking to a photo of Dave's backyard. An unauthorized excavation that endangered our children. Karen, the pool's been gone for 3 months, interrupted Jim Henley from the third row. It looks fine now. The precedent is what matters, Jim. Today, it's an unauthorized pool removal. Tomorrow it's unauthorized fences. Unauthorized paint colors. Unauthorized. Lady, you fell in a hole, called out Maria Santos. Get over it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen felt her authority slipping away like sand through her fingers. She'd ruled this HOA for 2 years with an iron fist, and now they were laughing at her. Fine, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. If you won't vote to find Dave Martinez, I'll handle this myself. After the meeting, Karen sat in her Mercedes in the parking lot, watching neighbors file out in small groups, heads bent together in conversation. Through her rolled-down window, she caught fragments. Obsessed. Embarrassing. Time for new leadership. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband. Currently on a business trip in Denver. Saw the neighborhood Facebook page. Maybe it's time to let this go? Karen deleted the message without responding. Richard had never understood her need for order, for respect, for control. He'd married the PTA mom, not the HOA enforcer she'd become. Starting her car, she drove past Dave's house. The backyard looked normal now. Grass seeds sprouting where the pool used to be, a small garden taking shape in one corner. It infuriated her. He was getting away with it, making her look like a fool, and everyone was moving on. But Karen Blackwood didn't move on. She escalated.